The oldest and strongest human emotion is fear, and the oldest and strongest type of fear is trepidation of the unknown. When we were children, our parents told us that monsters didn't exist, but we were sure that something was lurking under the bed or in the closet. Fear sees, even if our eyes are closed. Welcome to the realm of the arcane. My name is Lon Strickler. Join me as I examine unexplained creatures, strange manifestations, and remarkable realities. Imagine this next hour as a voyage of discovery to strange lands, seeking not for new territory, but for new knowledge of the supernatural. Come on board as we begin this adventure together. Hey folks, good evening and welcome to another episode of Arcane Radio, where we explore the unexplained live on Beyond Explanation. I'm your host, Lon Strickler, coming to you from the spectral shadows of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Now, I did want to mention, I've had a lot of folks asking about the Chicago, Lake Michigan Mothman map. Well, as many of you know, about 5 or 6 months ago, it got trashed. I don't know what happened to it. Google lost it. So I spent a couple of nights this week reconstituting it. So it is now back up. And if you want to look at it, you can go to my blog, and the links are there. So go ahead and check it out. It's a little different before, but I think it's a little bit better actually than it was before. So tonight, I welcome Spaced Out Radio host and supernatural experiencer Dave Scott to Arcane Radio. Now, Dave is the creator and host of Spaced Out Radio that is presented 7 nights a week on YouTube and the Spaced Out Radio website. Spaced Out Radio is an entertaining online radio program and website dedicated to talking about intriguing topics from UFOs to the paranormal to Sasquatch and more. A former radio journalist, Dave graduated with a diploma in broadcast communication from one of Canada's top broadcasting schools, BCIT, in 1998. Now, Dave then spent nearly 10 years in radio, mostly working in sports before leaving the field and pursuing other interests. Dave's personal quest into the unknown started in December 2011 when he had contact from what he calls the angel of death that he saw in his mother's eyes, which led to his first channeling experience. Now, after this incident, Dave's personal experiences started becoming more frequent. Premonitions started coming true. A Bigfoot sighting with 2 of the creatures within 100 feet of him. UFOs started appearing anytime he wanted, even though Dave had no idea what summoning was. Personal sightings of 5 extraterrestrial species, one that he has nicknamed Carl. On November 30th, 2014, Dave launched Spaced Out Radio, of which we are all grateful for. So, Dave, my friend, thanks for coming on the show.
Lon, it's always a pleasure to be in the presence of someone like yourself. And, you know, the one thing over the years that I have noticed is yourself and Butch Witkowski have really treated me very well with Spaced Out Radio. And I cannot thank you enough for being not only a friend, but a mentor in this business.
Well, the feeling's mutual, man. And I appreciate it anytime you ask me to come on. And, you know, well, let me ask you this. How's the COVID situation up your way?
Our little town where I live in is starting to get beat up pretty big. Pretty big right now. You know, I only live in a community of 1,800. So when I think there's like 54 cases in town right now, so it is starting to take effect here. You know, but right across Canada, there is quite a bit of COVID happening, and my cousin, who is a doctor, he is literally lectured all over the world talking about infectious diseases. And I always used to tease him about being a disease geek. And now, I don't read the media or the newspapers or online about COVID. If I have any questions, I go to him. I have not contacted it yet. I know people who have contacted it. I'm not a COVID denier. However, I will say I do have some questions that don't make sense. And, but we all got to be careful. We all have to take care of each other. I hate wearing that stupid mask, but I put it on because it's not for me, it's for other people. And I just would love one day to get my questions answered. I don't think we'll ever be able to, but the sooner the better that we get this crap out of here. That way, because I'm dying for a trip to Vegas, man. Dying for a trip to Vegas. And I haven't been there in almost 5 years, and it's time to go back.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I hadn't been there since, oh my Lord, 94. So, and I used to go there a lot, but I don't know. That's what happens to get old, I guess. Anyway, yeah, I have lost several friends with this COVID. I mean, it's and talking to them and to people and their families of what they experienced, it's pretty weird. It's pretty bad. And I'm on one of those COVID diets, less money, less crap you can eat. So, that's what I'm at right now. Luckily, it hasn't really been too bad in my area, but it has definitely increased recently, and I'm just waiting for the vaccine. And well, my son and I both, because my son actually works in a grocery store, so of course he's on the top of the list, and we're waiting for that stuff to get here, so we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, for sure.
And it's really put a crimp on the paranormal this past year with all the conferences being shut down. And I actually had three places I was supposed to be, which is high for me, to be, I was booked to be at this past year. And of course that didn't work out. So, we'll have to wait and see. I think it's going to be causing problems up until maybe late this year.
Well, we're going to see, and I mean, I could go down an entire road with that, just with my own personal thoughts and agendas, and I don't have enough tinfoil for that, Lon. But but I'll say this: I think it's scary. Where I don't know if it's happening in the United States, but it's happening here in my community and around Canada. I think it's real scary when people are calling the police or the newspapers to report businesses that they feel are not going through the proper protocol. Because here's the thing, nobody really knows what the proper protocol is. We just hear the up here, we hear the you got to have a mask to go in everywhere. But there are people who are exempt from the mask. Children are exempt from the mask. And so I know for one of my biggest concerns is when you have society ratting out people, the one thing that our society, especially as we move away from World War II, our society really hasn't given two cares about history. And
that's true.
And I know it seems like a long reach, and some people may be upset with me by saying this, but I will say this: when COVID became political, we were in trouble. When COVID, or pardon me, when the masks became fashion statements, we were in real trouble. But third, if you go back in history to some of the darkest times on this planet, it all started with citizens telling on other citizens, to the police, to the military, to everybody. And seeing that happen, and being a fan of, I'm not a fan of ancient history, but of recent history, let's say the last 100, 200 years, it's scary to me because this could really turn ugly. I hope it doesn't. I don't think it will, but when you have your own citizens calling you in on things, that's where things can get real ugly real fast if we the free and people with a vote don't start paying attention to what's going on.
Well, I agree with you on that. I mean, that's not good. And we do have some of that around here. Not as much, but I'd say in more progressive areas that may happen. I definitely do not live in a progressive area. And this is probably as red here around South Central Pennsylvania than most places. And I know my son gets upset. He works in that grocery store, and of course, he's been wearing the mask and the gloves actually, and he gets upset when people come in there without it, the mask and stuff. But I don't know. I tell him just don't get people routed. Just try to keep yourself as safe as possible. So.
Well, I'm going to tell you one more thing because I was talking about this with someone earlier today. When it comes to what helps and what doesn't, we do know that vitamin C and vitamin D work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to my doctor about this because in 2019, from April 2019 until the end of August of that year, I had bronchitis. Could not shake it, could not get rid of it. I was on 3 different puffers. I was on 2 separate sets of medication. Nothing was working. And I'm not a big naturopath kind of guy. And so, but I got so frustrated with my medicine not working that I actually went online and went to one of these naturopath healing sites. I couldn't even tell you what the website is. And they had a list of the top 10 healing items, for natural regression of bronchitis. And first one I read was hot tea and lemon. And I said, well, I'm going to throw that garbage out because after this long in radio, I know it works for a voice, and hot tea and lemon or honey and lemon does not work, at least for me. And then I scrolled down a couple of more. I'm like, this is BS. That's garbage. And then it got to number 5 where it said capsicum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, for people who don't know what capsicum is, it's the spice inside the heat of peppers, from habanero peppers on up to Carolina Reaper peppers. And what the capsicum does when it enters your system is, if anybody eats anything hot and spicy, it cleans your lungs and it burns the mucus lining of your lungs, which is why when you eat spicy food, your nose gets runny. And usually you have, like, if you're in a hot wings competition, you're usually blowing your nose a lot. Well, that's all the mucus that's coming up from your lungs. And so, me having a little bit of a hot sauce addiction that I do, I said, you know what? I'm going to do something stupid here. And I started taking capsicum, and I would take hot sauce and I would pour it into a teaspoon in the morning, shove it down, let it burn down my throat, for a couple of minutes, as long as I could take it, and then quickly run and grab some milk. And I did that morning, night, and one time I did it in the afternoon. And in 5 days, my bronchitis was gone. And so I started talking to my doctor about this because of my daytime work. My doctor, I'm a client of his, he's a client of mine. And he came in one day and I said, he goes, how are you doing with the whole COVID thing? This is before masks became mandatory. And I said, I feel great. I said, I am taking capsicum. I eat hot sauce every day. And I'm taking vitamin D and I'm taking vitamin C. He goes, capsicum. He goes, wonderful. He goes, you know what? He goes, if you're taking capsicum with vitamin C and vitamin D, he goes, the chances of you getting COVID are slim to none.
Mm.
Slim to none. And I went, really? And he goes, yes. He goes, just keep it up. And yet, okay, it worked for me. Not everything works for everybody. What is good for me may not be good for you or people in your audience or anything like that, but here's my thinking. Through this whole COVID thing, we haven't heard about capsicum once. Because what capsicum does, or pardon me, what COVID-19, what pneumonia, and what SARS and bronchitis is that forms with inside your lungs with a thick mucus lining. And the mucus lining gets thicker and thicker to the point where you cannot breathe as the infection takes over. What does capsicum do? It cleans your lungs. Therefore, if you're cleaning your lungs on a daily basis, you are not going to, or these diseases, for the most part, are not going to have an opportunity to sit inside your system. Now, hey, like I said, I'm not a doctor. I know what worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. If anybody out there wants to try it, see if it works for him, or her, or whatever, go for it. It worked for me. I'm sticking with it, and I haven't had it, knock on wood, yet, and my family has not had it, and hopefully we don't. So that's kind of what I'm thinking of. And
I kind of went in the same route you did. Uh, I had pneumonia back in 2016, and I was in the hospital for like a week. So I developed some scar tissue in my lungs and some other stuff. So what I started doing, and because I'm diabetic, I started taking 5,000 units of vitamin D every day.
right,
And have always been a hot sauce lover, and I eat it on everything.
me too.
And I haven't had any problem. Now, I take zinc too. I take a whole bunch of other stuff, turmeric and all kinds of other things. But when this COVID stuff started, I definitely stuck to the regime and started taking religiously every day. And fortunately, I haven't had any issues so far. And I do believe that may have something to do with it as well. But
Yeah.
you're right. The capsicum and using hot sauce and chili peppers and the whole thing, it does open you up. And yeah,
Mhm.
I agree with you on everything you said. I really do.
And like I said, I know it worked for me, and a lot of people will say, well, if it is work, if that so-called works, why is this disease blowing up in Mexico or Pakistan or India where they're used, or Vietnam where they're used to very spicy foods? You know,
Mhm,
well, our bodies here are different and our immune systems are different everywhere you go.
mhm.
So a person in Vietnam or India is going to have a different immune system than you or I have here in North America, and their body is going to react different. So you're able to um like I said, what works for me may not work for anybody else.
Mhm.
Everybody is different. I just know what's working for me, and I feel great. I mean, I could probably lose about 40 pounds, that's for sure,
Yeah, well,
but
I'm there
but
with you, my friend.
but as far as COVID, I'm
Yeah,
not as worried about it because I have been taking preventative measures and I do
yeah.
abide by the law even though I can't handle it.
Well, I think that's probably. I think everybody's got to try to come up with their own type of protection. And I think when this is all over with or close to being over with, I think there's going to be a lot more coming out, more research, people coming forward with what they've used to maybe avoid having, getting COVID.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot there. I think there are a lot of factors there that we just don't know about yet. I think it has a lot to do with maybe blood type and other such things. And I don't know. It's all speculation at this point. But this thing, it just does seem to hit certain people so bad that it's,
Well, I mean,
it's.
I have a nurse who listens to me,
Mm-hmm.
and she's a nurse in a care aid facility. And she's right on the front line. She has to wear a hazmat suit every day. She's like, "Dave, ever since COVID hit, we've been locked down, which means that nobody can enter the building,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have to wear hazmat suits. Everything gets cleaned multiple times a day, and it doesn't matter whether it's the directors, the bosses, the management, the janitors, the nurses, the care aides, whatever. If you are in contact with the elderly there, you have to wear a hazmat suit." She's like, "What doesn't make sense to me is we locked down before," she goes, "we locked down before COVID entered our facility." And she's like, "How did it get in if we were locked down? And we cannot enter the building without, like, for instance, if we're sick, if we're ill, if we're showing any symptoms, we're not allowed in the building. And when we enter the building, we have to be in a hazmat suit. How did it get in?" And she's not the most non-conspiratorial person that I know,
Mm-hmm.
or a lot of I shouldn't say that I know. That's putting her up on a pedestal, but she's very non-conspiratorial. She doesn't buy into conspiracy theory or any garbage like that. However, she does have, like many of us, she does have questions. And in her controlled environment where she works, she cannot understand how COVID has entered that building when everybody has been locked down since before COVID was even there. And these are a lot of the questions that I have as well. It's like last year with the NHL season. You'd see the players all sitting side by side on the bench, right? And they're all locked down in their players' bubble. But when they go to a press conference, after the post-game press conference, they're sitting 6 feet apart. These are guys who are just touching shoulder to shoulder, spraying sweat on each other, playing a hard physical game. But when it comes to the press conference after, they're going to sit 6 feet apart. Why? They haven't showered after the game. They haven't done anything yet. It doesn't make sense. So there's all these little nuances that I've noticed, and they're all pennies on a dollar, but you know what? Pennies add up.
Mm-hmm.
Pennies add up. And much like with everything in this world, when the media and the lawyers get involved and the politics get involved, we're all in trouble. But I hate to say this, but I think there's something a little more to this. I'm not going to say it's a conspiracy. I'm not going to go down that road because I'm not a COVID denier, but there are questions. There are serious questions that need to be answered, and unfortunately, we'll never get those answers.
Well, we'll just have to wait and see. That's all I can say at this point.
Exactly.
Hey, Dave, there was a sighting in BC in Silverton not long ago. I think it was Christmas Day, and I know the Toronto paper got wind of it and they wrote a story about it. So since you are in BC, is there anything you know about it you can add to the story?
Well, this happened about 2.5, 3 hours south of me, where I am in British Columbia. I'm almost at the central part, and this was kind of in the Kamloops, Kelowna type area of British Columbia, which British Columbia is very diverse. Okay, you have the ocean on the rainforests on the west coast, and then as you move into the interior, it becomes a giant desert, and then you move a little bit further out, not even 15, 20 minutes away, and you're in dense forest once again. And this area has always been kind of known as a Sasquatch area. Okay, much like all of British Columbia, and the lady who came in contact with the footprints, her name was Erica Spink D'Souza, and she said that she was speaking for the people who saw the creature, but they at first thought it was a grizzly bear in the
Mm-hmm.
area, or a large man that just stood up right in front of them. And from there, it was just a little bit weird because the minute they turned around, kind of like, what, did we really see what we saw? This thing had disappeared as per usual, because Sasquatch seems to have that ability just to disappear. The beautiful part about it was they were able to track a nice long set of tracks, because when the snow is falling, I mean, snow and mud are perfect for Sasquatch. Let's be honest. We're able to track them, you know,
Mhm.
except maybe Butch Witkowski, who would probably chase them on down and tackle them and drop an elbow right in the middle of their back,
Yeah.
because Butch is that guy. But they were able to track him. They only had a quick glimpse of this creature, and you know, once again, it's one of those eyewitness accounts where there's no photographs, there's no video of it. We do have footprints, but in Sasquatch land, we always seem to have footprints. So, it's just something that happens almost every day around this province, and it's just a matter of who's going to be the first one to finally be able to say, "We got it. We got it. We
Yeah.
got the proof. We got that next Patterson Gimlin video," or we shook hands with it and it gave us a urine sample, a blood sample, a semen sample, and, about 4 inches of hair with DNA on it. I don't know. I don't know. But
Well, you live in an area that is ripe for Bigfoot activity and
yes,
ripe for UFO activity.
yes,
Do you think there is actually a relationship between those two things?
100%.
Oh, do you?
100%. The
Okay.
one thing that I have, and Lon, I'm going to say, when I started Spaced Out Radio in 2014, I
Mhm.
didn't believe that at all. I thought they were all separate. But the more I got involved and listened to people like you, to listen to Butch, David Weatherly, John Tenney, Timothy Renner, and some people I hold in really high regard, there always is something strange with this creature and with these events that happen. And there is absolutely no way that we can say 100% that none of it is related. This is the disappointing fact. I heard from a gentleman I interviewed a couple of months ago named Carter Bouchard,
Uh-huh.
who is a member of the BFRO, and he came on the air and he went on record saying that any of these woo type of scenarios where there's ghosts around Bigfoot sightings, or UFOs, or aliens, or Dogman, or Chupacabra around Bigfoot sightings, that the BFRO is actually um, hiding those and burying those reports that come in. And there are hundreds of them, hundreds
Yeah.
of them. But because they don't believe in the woo, and they're all playing, I'm a scientist, even though I don't have a scientific degree and I haven't done science since high school. Look at me. I'm a Bigfoot scientist, right?
Mhm.
That they are burying proper and potentially quality evidence, because their science is about conducting opinion. It's not about conducting science. It's about conducting opinion. And if what Carter Brouchard says is true, shame on the BFRO. Shame
Mhm.
on them for holding back what could potentially be groundbreaking information that they won't even pass on to a guy like me, or a guy like you, or Butch, or my buddy Nate Foote in Spokane, or anybody. They won't do it.
Well, you know how I feel about this. I've been saying the same thing about MUFON for years now, where they withhold either entity or possibly Bigfoot connections with UFOs. They don't like to mention it. They will keep it in their CMS, but very rarely will they investigate it. And then when somebody else does investigate it, then they got an issue with it. You
Right.
know, well, you know what I have gone through, and I think it's the same with BFRO. And in fact, Carter just joined our group. So I know how he feels about it, and he and
Mhm,
I have talked about it before.
mhm.
I don't really know the ins and outs of the BFRO as much as he does or other folks do,
Mhm.
but I do know there is a tendency for them to dismiss other activity that they feel is not related to Bigfoot, and that
Yeah,
includes UFOs, spirit, and other paranormal activity. And you're right, it does hurt the actual investigation and research because
absolutely it does.
there is definitely, in my opinion, a connection. I do believe that Bigfoot, for the most part, is a supernatural being, and there's some other force or phenomena that's associated with it.
Look, we can't have thousands of years of legends and stories from First Nations and indigenous people who claim that this creature disappears right in front of them, or the BFRO theory that when we find these tracks that just end in mud or end in the snow, that Bigfoot is highly qualified enough to walk backwards into its tracks and not create a double print. I
Hmm.
mean, how stupid are we? And I remember talking to a, a Bigfoot research about that. I forget his name right now, but he was part of BFRO, and I said, you can't be serious about that. Reversing where there's not a double print. I said that's ignorant and stupid. I mean, to try and pull that off on the public as a reasoning as to why we're not seeing or why these Bigfoot tracks just stop in the snow and they do not continue. I mean, how dumb do you think we have to think that anything can create a perfect footprint walking backwards right into its previous foot setting? It's terrible.
Yeah,
It's
you're
asinine.
right. Yeah, it's interesting. The people that have been involved with this, especially with Bigfoot, who have had an open mind about the whole phenomena for years. You talk about like Stan Gordon. You talk to Stan, and then and other folks. And those folks that have known Stan and talked to Stan for years. And frankly, what he says is what's going on. And
Yeah,
the fact that there has been some pretty well documented evidence that there is there is a connection between the paranormal or the supernatural,
absolutely. But
and
but
uh, and we hear it more and more all the time. Actually,
but Lon, you take it a step further. Okay. Look, some of the bigger names in this field who are looking into Bigfoot, you take David Politis. This
hmm
guy's a 20-year cop who is on one of the greatest mystery runs right now and been very successful with it in regards to Sasquatch research and the missing 411. You take what he does and BFRO poo-poos it because there could be something supernatural about it. You take what the work of Ronald Moorhead. This is a guy who recorded the Sierra sounds in 1974, I believe,
hmm
from the Sierra Nevada mountains, and he can't get a Bigfoot conference because with the BFRO because he's too woo. He believes there's something supernatural about this creature. I mean, so when you have people editing what can and cannot be said for the community, we are all worse off for it because they're not there for the answer. They are there to promote their brand and it's their way or the highway. Well, you know what? I'm not a scientist, I'm a journalist. But the one thing I do know about science is the proof or disproof of theory, one way or another. Proving or disproving theory does not come from opinion. It comes from evidence. It comes from experimentation. It comes from journals of writing. Okay, a guy like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who doesn't believe in the woo, well, guess what? He's been able to track creatures through their footprints because footprints leave the same, are like handprints. Your footprints never change. And he's been able to see footprints grow and grow and grow. Okay, that's great. That's cool. But he doesn't want to study the other stuff. He's got his angle of study for university. That's what he does. But when I see people like there was this one Vancouver gentleman at a conference I spoke at a couple years ago where kept calling it the big hairy monkey or the big ape, the big hairy monkey. You don't know it's a monkey. Don't put down people who have had experiences because all you're doing is making yourself look like a real jerk. And that's the problem that we have in this field because there's not a lot of education. People want to make themselves known. They want to make themselves a star and be the man when they go out for a beer at the bar and, some cute girl is around and his buddy introduced her. Yeah, this is my buddy Mick over here and he investigates Sasquatch. Now he's the man to talk about these things, right? And that's what we are. It's an egotistical society that needs an enema on what is right and what is wrong with the investigation technique. Look, I'm going to preface once again, I am not an investigator. I am a journalist, I am a radio show host, and I am an experiencer. I tell stories. But when it comes to researchers, it doesn't matter whether it's paranormal, cryptids, or UFOs, if you're not willing to have an open mind and you're not willing to lie about what you do, whether you're like a lot of the UFO people claim they're journalists and investigative journalists and they've never worked in a newsroom in the day in their lives, or you have a lot of people in the cryptid world who claim to be conducting, and paranormal is pretty much the same too, claim to be conducting scientific experimentation on the phenomena when they haven't conducted a science experiment since probably high school. Come on. This is what makes people laugh at our field. We have incredible experiences. We have an incredible journey. We have people who are taking this very seriously and not afraid to open any doors. We have to be able to look at all facets because if we don't, we're never going to solve the mysteries. And this is why, when in my own research, Lon, I've always, and I'm sorry for going on a little bit of a rant here.
Oh,
okay. But
go ahead.
I've always looked up to people like you and Butch and like I said, David Weatherly, John Tenney, Ross Allison, because the door is never closed. Grant Cameron is a great example of that in the UFO world where, Grant and I were talking about it, and it's much like this. When you open up the first door to this phenomena and you look inside, there's 10 more doors. And behind each one of those 10 doors is 10 more doors. And what people like Grant and David and Butch and everybody do is they follow those open doors until they either come to a dead end or they come to a stop. But if that door stays open, they keep on going because you don't know what's at the end. And it's the people who take the most crap and the most vitriol from the UFO paranormal cryptid public who are the ones who are actually doing, for the most part, the best research possible because they're not closing any doors until they have the answer. And if we had more brilliancy like that in this field, imagine how much further we would get. We would be a hell of a lot further in finding those answers if we took the time to open the doors and follow the path.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir, my friend. I know, I feel the same way. This is why I like to get into the hard cases, just like the one I was explaining to you tonight that Butch and I are looking into now. And, of course, the C's case and other cases, you got to keep an open mind. When something doesn't smell right, you need to look into it. You need to try to find a decent answer. Well, you look at the Chicago phenomena, these winged humanoids. I mean, these things, we have no idea why they are doing what they're doing, why they're showing up, where they're showing up. But, people are coming forward. We're up to over 120 cases now where we believe that something was actually seen. And we just really don't at this point know what it is, but we got a good idea. We believe it's something beyond our reality. for a lot of different reasons. The way it just shows up suddenly and it disappears suddenly, and some of the other aspects of it, you know, where aerodynamically this thing can't fly. There's something supernatural about it. So,
Mhm.
you got to take that type of thinking into anything you look into.
Yeah.
And you talk about the UFOs, MUFON, exactly. Yeah, they're the same way.
Right.
I have gotten so frustrated with them for years, uh, and have gotten a lot of cases from people where they just decided, there's an entity involved, so we're not going to get involved with it, and just ignore them. And then somebody comes begging to you to look into their case,
Yes.
and you're lucky enough to find something. Something is there.
Absolutely. I,
So
I can
yeah,
I could tell you this. Can I please tell you a couple of personal experiences?
sure.
Okay. Thank you. When I had my Bigfoot sighting in 2013, a few days later, my friends and I, this happened on my friend's property in
Hmm.
the top of a mountain in British Columbia here, Mission, British Columbia, which is a well-known Bigfoot hotspot. It's about 45 minutes between Mission and Harrison Hot Springs, which of course is where a lot of the major activity has happened. But they had a lot of things happen on their property. They had like this mini 10-acre ESETI ranch. I mean, there was like paranormal activity, there was UFOs, there was aliens, Bigfoot. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable what was happening there. Anyways, long story short, 5 days after we had the Sasquatch experience my buddy and I saw two of them, and we were doing a perimeter walk around their house. And there was four of us there, and there's a couple of ponds, and we started hearing giant splashes in the ponds. Well, we knew it wasn't beavers or otters or anything like that because they're not up on our mountains.
Hmm.
Okay, so we started thinking this is weird. So we keep walking. We're kind of walking along the side of the house. Got this feeling, I did, that we were being followed. I turned and looked, and in the backyard, going towards the old horse pen, there was this giant old black cherry tree, and I could see pixelation standing from the ground to about 8 feet, 10 feet up. One other person of the four of us saw that pixelation. We brushed it off, walked another 10, 15 yards to the front of the house, and that's when we got roared at, like 15, 20 seconds later. And it was the most blood-curdling roar/scream I have ever had. There's a couple things I noticed about it. Number one, it did not echo. All the other farm animals up on that mountain, you could hear the echo. This did not echo. And number two, it was just gone, just disappeared. But in our area, a lot of First Nations believe that Sasquatch can shapeshift or is interdimensional. So, what was that pixelation? According to the BFRO or people like that, what I saw means nothing. It means nothing. Well, guess what? As a journalist, I'm a paid observer. When I would sit in the Vancouver Canucks press box for 486 games straight, my job was to observe a hockey game. What happened? What didn't happen? Where did things break down? Same as with the Canadian Football League. I would do the same thing. And that was my job. Okay. So I'm pretty sure if I saw a pixelation, I saw a pixelation. And fast forward to just a couple of years ago, now that I'm living up here in British Columbia, where I am, speaking of the Ronald Moorhead Sierra sounds, we heard that. We heard that talking, that what they call the samurai chatter.
Hmm.
We heard that right in front of us, maybe 50, 60 feet. We ended up this past year setting up a gifting site there,
Hmm.
and we had some weird stuff happen.
Yeah, I know.
We did. And this did I tell you the story of the nickel?
Hmm. No, I don't think you told me that one.
Oh, well, do you mind if I do?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I actually I'm gonna try this. I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to just see if we can play a little game here because my buddy Mark, when we set up the gifting site, there it is. Perfect. So when we set up a gifting site, we put it, there's this giant tree. It's literally about 15, 16 feet round. Beautiful. It just way up there. It was right by where we had heard the sounds. Okay. We found this big open tree. So we set up some toys there. Okay. And my buddy Mark was with him and was with us. He's our armed guard when we go into these areas because there's a lot of animals that could kill you where I am. And I don't mean that. I mean, there's grizzly bears, black bears, cougars, moose, wild horses. So, anyways, his daughter grabs a nickel out of her pocket. And if you, I hope this works. Hold on. Let me just go like this. You, uh, let me zoom in here. She puts a nickel on, let me see if I can get rid of that glare. There it is. You can see she puts a nickel right in the middle of that rotted out tree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We go there the following week, and that nickel is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gone. Can't find it. Okay. Let's think logically here for a second. Could be a pack rat, could be a crow, a raven, chipmunk, squirrel, whatever it may be. But here's the problem. We go back the following week, the nickel is still not there, but my son, who's 7 years old, says, as we're kind of looking around the area for the nickel and just looking for footprints, he goes, "Hey, Dad, what's that?" I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Why is there a coin on the coin, pardon me, not corn, coin on the ball?" Okay. So this nickel that went missing originally was a 1960s nickel. This one is a 2019. Now, in my area, okay, so now if you think logically, people will say, well, maybe somebody went in there and placed one. Good possibility. Good possibility. Okay, but I'm going to give you another angle here, if you don't mind. Okay, this was afterwards. You will see, let me just go like this here for a second, then I'll hit the explanation. You will see that that purple ball is standing on an angle in the tree, okay? See that? And you see the basketball down on the left?
Right.
Okay, we're going to get to the basketball in a second. So the nickel was placed on top of that purple thing that's sticking out on an angle. And as I thought about it more, I talked to my good friend Bob McGuire, who's a former all right. Hi, that's Alaska's greatest athlete, Emily Bigelow, right there. The gorgeous and talented Emily Bigelow. She's amazing. Anyways, um, so I was talking to Dr. Bob McGuire about it. He goes, "Dave, you're missing one of the most important facts out of this whole thing." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "Who the hell would place a nickel on there?" Right? Because we don't have a lot of people running through the forests in our area. There's not a lot of people up here. Okay, but here's the thing, Lon. If you and I are around, okay, or even if you're home alone or your audience is home alone, and we take our cell phone, are we putting our cell phone right on the edge of the table so it sits there like that? Or are we putting it someplace where it's safe? You see what I'm saying? Who's going to put a nickel on top of a ball where any heavy rain, any heavy wind, any snowfall, any snow that gathers in the trees that falls down because of weight when it gets wet, any sleet is going to knock that nickel off? Why would you put it there? Doesn't make sense. A human is always going to place things, for the most part, in a stable, structured area. It wasn't in the toys. that we have on the ground. It wasn't in the bark. It wasn't near the colored glass rocks that we placed on that tree. It was sitting on top of the ball that it wanted to be found. So could it have been human? Absolutely. Absolutely. We can never rule that out. But the chances of it, if you think of human instinct, the chances of it being human and potentially being something else is much greater.
Mm.
So the basketball.
Okay.
I want to get your opinion on this here for a second, because a week later we go back again. The basketball, hold on, let me just bring this here. The basketball, as you can, let me just get out of the light there. It can
Okay.
see that it's now moved.
Okay.
Okay. It's moved to the front of the tree. I pick up the basketball, and here's what's interesting on there.
Yeah. What is that? Is it blood?
It felt like grease.
Hmm. Interesting.
So if you look at it, let me do that again. I'll zoom in a little bit here. If you look at it, oh goodness, there's my clumsiness. If you look at it, it looks like fingerprints.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it
Right?
very well could be fingerprints.
Could be. Could be. Could it be a bear? Could it be a deer? Could it be a Sasquatch? I don't know. What I do know is that the the substance that was on there was very greasy. Very
Hmm.
greasy. Like, I have greasy skin. If I go like that, I can feel the grease on my forehead because
Mm-hmm.
apparently I have oily skin. But it felt, it didn't feel wet. It would be like if it didn't smell, but if you spray WD-40 on something and it gets really slick and it almost feels moist, but it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like.
Mm.
Unfortunately, here's the crappy part about that. Unfortunately, I brought the ball up to my chest because my hands were cold and I was fumbling with my phone, and the basketball, I didn't realize, where the grease was against my chest,
Mm.
and it wiped off.
Mm.
And I'm a little PO'd about that because it would have been a nice little thing to test.
Mm.
That's for sure. But yeah,
Mm.
it was greasy. So is it fingerprints? I don't know. All I know is whatever brown substance was on there was greasy. Maybe it was poo. I don't know. Maybe it used it to wipe its ass. I don't know. Right?
I don't know. That's really the first time I've heard anything like that.
Yeah.
Uh, and I had recent years I have been more fascinated by some of the results and some of the things people talk about as far as gifting goes, because I years ago I really didn't buy into it. I wasn't really sure what to think about it. But the more and more people do things now and do different types of things, there does seem to be actual gifting going on to where, you'll lay something down, it'll pick it up, then exchange with something else back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it does. I think there is something to that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
why they do it, I don't know. Is it like human nature where they're curious or they want to bond somehow or want you to know that they know they're there, or what's the rationale behind it?
I don't know. I know that we shortly after that had placed a uh, a camera up there. We
Hmm.
placed a trail cam up there, and my buddy Mike stated that we had that camera up there for 7.5, 8 days, and we did not get a single photo. No birds, no deer, no wolves, no cats, no horses, no grazing cattle, nothing.
That's
Nothing. The
unusual.
only photos that we got in that area were us leaving and us coming in.
That's unusual.
Yes.
I mean, I don't care where you put one of those cams at, you're going to get something over that period of time.
You would think.
Yeah. Unless there's something that, because either the Sasquatch being there or mark the territory somehow that
Right.
these other creatures avoid the area.
Right. Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's it's one of the mysteries we have.
Yeah.
But I can't wait to get back there. I would love to get back there right now, but the problem is the way the snow goes in the mountains here, there's no chance unless I had an ATV with tracks on it. There's no way we're getting out there. And I left everything out there. I left the basketball out there. I left the toys out there. I left everything out there because there was no point in bringing the ball back because I'd accidentally wiped off whatever was on there.
Mm-hmm.
A stupid amateur move on my end, I know. But what do? Can't do anything about it now. I screwed up.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if there's anything changed or anything there when you get back.
I've got 3 months. I got 3 months to wait.
Yeah, I'd be like you. I'd be having ants in my pants too because.
Oh, we are. We are. We just have to. We're working on something where a buddy of mine out here just bought a 4-seat side-by-side with tracks on it. The problem is he doesn't have a trailer for it because he usually just goes out of his backyard and starts riding. But where we need to go, we need to trailer it in. So we may have to borrow a trailer from someone or one of my other buddies who has a bigger trailer to load this thing on and then make our way out there because that's the only way we could get out there right now is if we had tracks because tires just will not cut it.
Yeah. Wow. Well, that area, you did mention there has been UFO activity as well. Is there anything you can tell us about that?
The famous case, my area is really strange, Lon, because, and I didn't really know this until I moved up here, because I moved up here on a whim. My area is very haunted. It's right along the original Gold Rush Trail. So if I drew a line straight behind me, about 1 mile, if that, you're literally on the Gold Rush Trail that went right up to Alaska in the 1800s.
Oh, okay.
You have a community that was built off of a religious cult 52 years ago. Okay, you have an area where there is a lot of UFO sightings. I know I was talking to one of the First Nations chiefs around here, and I was asking him about Sasquatch one day, and he kind of sheepishly said, "No, we don't get a lot of Sasquatch." He goes, "I just wish the star people would leave our people alone for once." So you have a lot of UFO activity. The famous case of Miriam Delicado back in 1988 happened in our town where their vehicle, her and her friend's vehicle, was followed for approximately 200 kilometers. And then when they got outside of our town on what we call the 99-mile hill, it ended up, this craft ended up pulling the vehicle over. And 3 people in the car basically turned into zombies and fell asleep. And then she got out of the vehicle and went for a 3-hour tour, came back. When she closed the door to the vehicle, everybody else woke up and they couldn't figure out why the car was cold and that they were still in 100 Mile House. So we have a very large trifecta. Also, I'm hearing reports from a couple of First Nations people that there have been some dogman sightings up here as well in this area.
Really?
One of them told me that he just a couple of years ago that he was hunting with his brother and they were hunting for black bear, and his brother thought that they had a couple of black bears standing up about 200 yards in front of them, but when he raised his rifle he realized that it was a dog-like creature standing up staring back at him, and he got the typical telepathic message that says don't shoot, won't be good for you. So he put his rifle down and he said to his brother Eddie, he said, we need to go. We need to leave right now and let's get out of here. Let's go home. And so they did. And so I know there's been dogman north of me by a few hours, but we really run the gamut in this little community. It's very haunted. It's traipsed with paranormal history, and watching the town, kind of deny that paranormal existence. It's kind of funny and kind of frustrating at the same time because my little community doesn't get a lot of tourism revenue, and trying to tell people and explain to people, about what happens in West Virginia or in Snowflake, Arizona, or all of these hotbed communities where weird things have happened, that there's tourism revenue to be made off of this if you just accept it. And, by the time I die, I would love to get a memorial plaque put down where Miriam Delicato was taken. I think that would be a great tourist attraction.
That was a weird story. That was a weird account. I remember reading that several years ago, and that has always stuck with me.
Yeah.
It's a bizarre account. I might have to go back and look at that and repost that sometime.
I look at that hill
account.
every day.
Oh, do you?
Every day.
Huh.
And I
Well,
wonder
Dave,
every day.
I know you got your own show tonight. People can find you at spacedoutradio.com and on YouTube. Folks, if you haven't listened to and seen Spaced Out Radio, I definitely recommend it. You never know what you're going to see there. David is an entertainer and a great show host. There's no doubt about that. And let's say, is it stump or is it stone?
What's that?
Is it stump or is it stone?
Oh yeah, no, it's all team stump, man. It's all team stump, and apparently I'm in the minority because I don't eat breakfast for dinner, and because in my opinion they're labeled as breakfast foods for a reason.
Yeah,
and they shouldn't be eaten at dinner time. And shame on you if you do. But yeah, we try and have a little bit of fun and kind of do things out of the normal, But I'm blessed with an audience that keeps growing. I'm blessed with people like you and Butch and other people in my life who've helped me not only learn a lot about this phenomena, but on how to broadcast and talk about it. Lon, thank you so much for allowing me this opportunity to share with you again. It's really humbling, and I'm such a big fan of yours, and I hope we could do it again.
We'll talk soon. I'm quite sure of that. So you have a good show tonight, and I'll talk to you later.
Thank you so much. You take
care. You take care. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have an unexplained encounter or sighting, feel free to contact me through the Phantoms of Monsters blog site. If you're interested in supporting Phantoms of Monsters and Arcane Radio, you can use the PayPal donation buttons and links on the newsletter and the blog. Of course, YouTube channel Beyond Explanation has content being entered all the time. Lots of new shows on there, lots of new stuff on the way. Check it out and subscribe. I want to again thank Dave Scott for joining me this evening, and I want to thank you for listening to the show. Stay healthy,